Leadership, service magic. I'm going to share with you some thoughts today about both my career at Disney, but more importantly, some of the lessons that I learned, and they are in this best-selling book. You can use it as a doorstop. You can use it as a sleep aid. It's really cool. No, actually, based on subsidies, you guys have a pretty good deal here. And I just want to let you know, for those of you that buy this book, we are donating all proceeds to an organization called NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, to help reduce the stigma associated with that. But in here, I have quotes, I have ideas from many men and women, but in particular, the man who I referred to earlier as the mentor that helped me for many, many years, a guy named Van France. Van France was hired directly by Walt Disney in early 1955. Disneyland opened in July of 55. And Walt was smart enough to realize that he and his team of designers, architects, construction people, ride engineers, were architects of things, of science. And they needed a person to be the architect of people development. Much like you have a chief cultural officer, HR director, Van France would have been the chief cultural officer of the day. And he's the one who started the Disney University. It wasn't known as the university originally, but he's the man who created the university. So I want to share with you some thoughts about what Van brought to the table, and compare and contrast, seriously, the amazing culture that you belong to. You think about Googlers and Nooglers and Googleplex and all of the vernacular that this young company has created in such a short amount of time. You have to have a tremendous amount of pride. I feel the same way about Disney. We had our own vernacular, which has lived. Disneyland is going on 60 years of age now. Cast member, on stage, backstage, good show, bad show. But here's the point. The culture is a lot more than just words. It's a lot more than fanciful colored bikes. It's a lot more than free lunches. It's a lot of hard work. And I'll share with you briefly how we squandered that at Disney. We actually almost lost the entire company, not once, but twice in a 20-year period. Despite the name recognition, the international brand and love for all the characters and all the attractions we'd built and movies and songs and that sort of thing. So yes, enjoy your unique culture and your position in the world and constantly being put on a pedestal and recognized as one of the best employers in the world, and to have such a great environment in which to work. I envy you. Enjoy it while you have it right now. Enjoy it in your youth. Enjoy it as you get older as well. So I'm going to share with you a thought from Van France. And this slide I've got right now, capturing hearts and minds, fosters trust and innovation. Again, Walt Disney was smart enough to realize that his team and he had to focus on the hardware, on the rides and on the attractions. But who was going to get those cast members on board that were going to create the happiest place on earth? People that didn't know a thing about theme parks, because theme parks had not yet been invented. 16-year-olds to 85-year-olds and everything in between. How do we do that? And so Van created this environment, and he learned that that environment existed for decades before he ever saw Disneyland. Let me read one little excerpt from the book that I used to kind of set the tone for what Van walked into when he realized that his own quirky sense of humor was going to fit in perfectly with Walt Disney's quirky sense of humor. So I say in here, Van first met Walt in 1954. Then he was asked to join the company. He said, I was asked to meet Walt Disney, and the meeting was held in the animation building. This is where all the artists reside at the Disney Studios in Burbank, California. The meeting was held in the animation building, home to all the artists, and it's also where Walt's office was located. I parked in the visitor's lot and set off on foot down Snow White Lane, past Dopey Drive, until I came to Mickey Mouse Avenue and the studio's 3-story animation building. This is from a man who worked in World War II factories. He worked in aluminum smelting plants. He worked in anything but a fun environment, but he was an irascible character himself. In fact, one of the ways that we described Van France to our fellow colleagues who never got a chance to meet him was he was a combination of Snow White kind of person, but really he was more like Mary Poppins. He was beautiful in soul and spirit, and he was a guiding light like Mary Poppins. He was like Jiminy Cricket, guiding Pinocchio down the right path. So he kept us on track to keep Walt Disney's dream alive. But he was also like an angry Donald Duck, and Donald's known to have a short temper. And if you gave excuses, he would get in your grill immediately and let you know in no uncertain terms what was wrong and how you had to fix it. In fact, one of Walt's favorite quotes, and Van taught this to me, was, "Don't come to me with no because. Come to me with yes if." And that opened up all kinds of doors of creativity and opportunity. So this thing about capturing hearts and minds, and one of the things that we tried to do, and I think did it pretty well in the Disney University, when we would have new hire orientation every week before a busy season at Disneyland or Walt Disney World. We'd have 60 to 80 to 90 new hires. We didn't call them nooglers like you do, but they were just called new hires, new cast members. And we had 8 hours to inculcate them, to get them excited. And in addition to sprinkling a lot of pixie dust on their heads, we did a lot of other things to capture their hearts and minds. And one of the most important things that we did was this. We talked about the importance of teamwork, of cleanliness and friendliness that our customers paid a premium for. They'd pay a premium to come to Disney because it's clean, it's safe, and the rides work. Yes, Universal Studios might have faster, sexier rides, but they break down all the time. And they might have more employees, but they're snarky. If you ask a Universal employee, "Where's the washroom?" they're going to say, "It's over there, can't you smell it?" But if you ask a Disney employee, they're going to stop, they're going to look at you and say, "Sir, ma'am, it's right this way," with an open palm. But we would talk about this, we would show videos, but it's still at the cognitive level. It's just at the brain level. How do we capture their hearts? And so the last hour of orientation, we would take them through the park. We would talk about the architecture. We would talk about the theming. But our primary goal was for them to see with their own eyes multiple examples of non-custodial personnel bending over and picking up trash. Executives going to and from staff meetings. Cast members, obviously not custodians, going to or from breaks, bending over and picking up trash. And as soon as my new hires saw that, I know that I've captured their hearts. Now they're thinking, "Oh yes, what they talked about there in the Never Never Land of Disney University actually happens." Where all too often I see organizations, and I'm not saying Google, but a lot of organizations try to emulate the Google culture, the Disney culture, and metaphorically, like I have on the slide here, try to put up a coat of paint on a dilapidated, rundown building. The culture isn't strong, or it's not even set up yet, but they think just by having fanciful names, colorful t-shirts, or really cool posters on the wall, that'll make people buy in. Ultimately, those posters become the butt of jokes if people aren't living and breathing that culture. To this day, I can't walk across a property, see a piece of trash on the ground, and not go into the automatic robot mode of, "Oh, must bend over and pick up trash." So kudos to you for, in a short amount of time, creating such a strong culture, because culture happens in one of two ways, either by design or by benign neglect. And all too often I see benign neglect taking the stage, people not really trying to mold it, just letting it happen. I also want to open up, and I talked to Marjay about this, if you have questions, if you have comments, let's open up right now and say it's okay to do that. We have a microphone we're going to run around. Please don't hold back. If you're sitting there thinking, "Well, yeah, Doug, it sounds great, but how do you do it?" Or, "Oh, what does that really mean?" Or, "I agree," or, "I disagree," let me know. Does anybody have any questions, any clarification necessary at this time? We've got mic runners. Where's the mic? Right there. All right. Anybody? Yes, sir, in the back.
Thank you. I'd love to hear more about how you got beyond the cognitive level of helping people absorb that culture and even the reinforcement.
Getting beyond the cognitive level is really what was being said in the classroom in the Disney University was happening every day on the job. And so it didn't remove it from the cognitive level, it just blended the cognitive and the gut level into one. There was congruence between the message. Because in the university, we had people who had operations background. Operations people always filtered through the university. So when you walked out as a newly hired employee or as a mid-level manager, or when Michael Eisner joined the company, And I had him in the Disney University. In fact, on the back of that book, you'll see Michael wrote a testimonial saying, when I joined Disney as the CEO, I had to go back to school to the university. When the CEO walks into the university as the equivalent of a noogler, that sends a massively powerful message to everybody else in the organization. When I was in charge of training at Disney Studios, that's a whole different ballgame, training 35 to 85-year-old Hollywood executives. They're a tough crowd versus the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kids you get at Disney World or Disneyland. I wasn't going to fight the battle of having a discussion about creativity with them. I would call in the chairman of Disney Studios, Dick Cook, who was in charge of running a huge corporation. He's the man who brought in Johnny Depp to do all the Pirates series. When he walked in a room and said, hey, let's have a discussion for 30 minutes about the creative process of creating a film, you capture people's hearts and minds. And that was the message, is that if it's good enough for a 16-year-old new hire, it's good enough for that senior executive and everybody in between. So that became part of the culture. And when it becomes part of the culture, you take it out of the cognitive realm and you put it right in the heart. All right, so let's push on. Again, in short, the Disney University is not a standalone fix-it operation. It's a vehicle for the culture of the organization. It's part and parcel to what the company's all about. So what I'm showing you right now, and it really does feed in nicely. In fact, thank you for the cue. You'll get your bonus after the presentation's over. Van France, again, my mentor, talked about why does the university survive? And I have to tell you, as a training and development OD specialist, I consult with companies all around the world. All too often I have people that will challenge me and say, well, of course the Disney University has success. I mean, if I had Mickey Mouse leading a cheer for my employees, I'd have no problem getting people in the room. If I had posters of Walt Disney holding all of his Oscar awards, I'd have no problem. In fact, the Oscar that Walt won for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is really cool. Has anybody ever seen it? It's, of course, the AV guy's seen it. The other old guy in the room has seen it, don't you? It's a single Oscar with 7 baby Oscars lined up next to it representing the 7 dwarfs.